Do you hate playing against the queen's pawn opening and having to play these boring, slow, positional games that makes you hate yourself? Then you, my friend, in the right place, because today we are going to learn about the Buddhabist Gambit. After white plays d4, we are going to go knight to f6 here, entering the Indian game, and now white goes c4, grabbing more central space. Now we are going to immediately create conflict by playing pawn to e5, gambiting a pawn in the center. So white will usually accept the gambit. We are going to take a look also what to do when white declines the gambit later on the video. So now we are going to go knight to g4, attacking this pawn on e5, also putting pressure on the pawn on f2. The most played move here for white is knight to f3, developing but yet also protecting his own pawn. Now we are going bishop to c5, hit that pawn on f2. So now white most sensible move is to play e3 to cut off this attack, and now we are going to go knight to c6, applying more pressure to our gambited pawn, just sacrifice. So we will get knight to c3 from white, now short castles from black, and now pawn to h3 from white. If white goes h3 at any moment, we would just take this pawn on e5, and this will be just a waste of time from white. But instead, white should develop his bishop to e2, which after that we are going to develop the rook also to e8. We are not grabbing this pawn. At any time we could take it, so why taking it right now? So white castles kingside, and now we are going to play the scheme move, which is pawn to a5. The idea behind a5 is, first of all, white would love to expand on the queen side with a3, b4 ideas, so we are stopping this whole idea with pawn to a4, but not the most important idea. The most important one is to lift this rook to the king side here. So b3 from white is the best move. Now knight c takes e5. You don't want to grab with this one, but instead you want to take with this one to undermine the knight on f3. So bishop to b2, and now rook to a6. Also another idea from taking this pawn with this knight is to free up this row here for our rook to get over to the king side. So now knight to d5 from white is not the best move here, and I'll show you why. Because knight takes f3, bishop takes f3, and here we don't move our knight back, but instead we sacrificed the knight. The crazy horse is getting into h2. So king takes h2 is forced to checkmate actually, because queen to h4, king to g1, and now rook to h6. The only way to stop the checkmate will be giving away all of the pieces here, but this will be just an easy win here for the black piece. So knight d5 was not the best choice for white. Instead, white should take on e5, but after that knight takes e5, and then now knight to e4. This is the best variation for white to go for. And right now he is hitting the bishop on c5. And you know, if you retreat the bishop on this diagonal, it will be a slow, boring game again. So this is why you should go bishop to a7. And right now, keeping the bishop on this diagonal is better for black. And you know, at any moment, if white decides to take this knight, then after rook takes e5, you are just gaining another tempo and you are attacking white. But instead, the best move here is to play knight to g3 and getting this knight to defense. Now we are going to continue our plan by lifting the rook to the king side, rook to h6. And you know, knight f5 is just a one move attack, because after that we are just going to go rook to g6, which after that we will be still attacking. And after pawn to d6, we are going to be attacking this knight anyways, so why to do knight to f5 from the beginning? But instead, the best move here for white is to play bishop to d4, but after that, we are not going to capture. Capturing is completely fine, but it gives white an edge after white takes back with his pawn. But instead, we are going to go queen to h4, creating a threat here on h2. Checkmate in one is being threatened, so now white goes for h3, and now pawn to d6, just developing, and yet one more time, we are leaving this bishop to grab our bishop because we are going to sacrifice. So bishop takes a7, bishop takes h3, and this is really complex position right now, but black should be winning with this strong attack right now on the king side. The first one is g takes h3, which after that queen takes h3, queen to h2 is unstoppable. Bishop to h5 would be the only move for white to try to stop the attack. But a move like g6 should be very good here for white. Also, another option after we take the pawn is to block this attack with bishop to h5 immediately. But after that, we are going to play bishop to g4, forking the queen and forking the bishop. Right now, if they take, we will take back with our knight, threatening the checkmate. And also, we could go queen to h2 checkmate in one really simply. But here, after that, best move here for white is to play pawn to f3 to block this attack. First of all, you could just take on h5 and it's all good, but this king may escape, so you want to take on g3 instead. And after f takes g4 here, you could just go b6. And this bishop is right now worth -4. It should be worth +3, but this one is -4. This one is -3. Like, it cannot move. This one cannot move. At any moment, if you wanted to win this bishop back, you could go g6. At any moment you want to win this bishop, you would play rook to a8 and just simply win the bishop on the next turn. So now let's go to take a look at another variation after d4, knight to f6, c4 one more time, e5, and now d takes e5, knight to g4. Here, the second most played move for white is bishop to f4. Now, there is a variation here that could go with bishop to b4, which after that, knight d2, knight c6, and you will regain back your pawn after knight to f3, queen e7, for example. This pawn is guaranteed to be won from black, but the thing here is that this variation after e3, knight g takes e5, bishop to e2, the thing here is that our position is awkward right now. White's got development, white's got everything he wanted, so why to go for this variation? But instead, we are trying to attack, right? So after bishop to f4, right now we are going to go g5, immediately attacking this bishop on f4. Bishop to g3, and now bishop to g7 to hit this pawn on e5. Also, another option could be bishop to d2, which we are going to take a look after bishop to g3 first. And now bishop to g7, immediately attacking the pawn. Knight to f3 to defend the pawn, and now knight to c6. So putting pressure on the pawn again and again and again. So now knight to c3 from white, continuing normal development. And now we should just capture back this pawn on e5. Knight takes e5, knight takes e5, and now pawn to e3. And usually we will continue with pawn to d6, trying to open up this bishop diagonal. Also, at any case, if white goes for a move like h4, we are going to push g4 and the bishop to e2 to try to win our pawn. We are even going to go pawn to h5. Our kingside here is so safe. In fact, we are always castling kingside and even pushing f4, f5, as we will see right now. Another option, instead of going for h4 from white, is to just play bishop to e2 immediately, which after that we are going to play bishop to e6, castles from white. And right now, be careful, because a lot of beginners here would think, okay, free pawn, let me grab it. And we missed something. At the very end, there is queen to a4, forking the king and forking your knight. So you shouldn't go for this, but instead you should castle on this position. So right now you are attacking the pawn on c4 because there is no longer queen to a4 check. So pawn to b3 from white in order to defend, and they are uncomfortable opening up this diagonal when they play f3. So right now we want to be aggressive, guys, right? Like, we are sacrificing a pawn from move 2, so we might as well go and launch our own attack by playing pawn to f5. This pawn is trying to go to f4, the white piece is cramped. Also, this diagonal is very good, and this queen could join from f6. So right now, if white is careless and let's say they play pawn to a3, you will just play f4 and this bishop cannot go anywhere, thanks for our queen covering the square of h4. So let's go back for a moment, and after f5, the best move here for white is to play queen to d2, but to try to stop f4, but now you will play queen to f6, trying to go f4 one more time, and the only way for white to stop the pawn from going to f4 is to play f4 themselves, but this move is just losing because knight takes c4, and after bishop takes c4, bishop takes c4, This massive exchange happens. You win your piece back at the end. I guess here you could argue that our king is weak after check and then take to h8, but also the white position is weak. The pawn on e3 is under threat. This bishop is attacking this rook far away, and at any moment you could take on f4, causing white some troubles. If they capture back with this pawn, they are opening this diagonal, which could weaken their king. But let's start from the beginning and take a look on this variation. After knight to f6, c4, pawn to e5, and then white could just ignore you and play knight to c3. And this one variation immediately gives the black the equalizing of the position after e takes d4, queen takes d4, and now just knight c6, attacking the queen, winning a tempo on the queen, queen to d1, and now bishop to b4, pinning this knight. If white ignores that and just plays knight to f3, we will just take the knight, giving white a doubled isolated pawns on the c file, which is very horrible here for white. So instead, white should not allow that, and white should go for bishop to d2. Here you could just simply castle, or also play pawn to b6 in order after, like, let's say a3 from white, bishop c3, even a crazy move here is knight to e4, allowing bishop takes g7, but after that you will play rook to g8, and after a move like, let's say, bishop to h6, here you could go for queen to f6, going for the triple attack here. You will win back your pawn and you will have such a great position. Otherwise, if white did not grab the pawn, like let's say after knight to e4, they go like queen c2, here takes, and then you just simply castle, put your bishop on b7, put your pawn on d6, get your rook to e8, queen to e7, and you are having a nice king, nice bishop on this diagonal, and you are doing very well as black here. So let's take a look at this variation also. After d4, knight to f6, c4, e5, and now we get d5 from white. So refusing our gambit, and right now, as this pawn gets pushed from d4 to d5, right now this square is very juicy for your bishop to immediate putting pressure on the pawn on f2. So if white plays bishop to g5, this is the quickest way to win. After bishop takes f2, king takes f2. Here you could just play knight to g4, check, king to e1, and then grab this bishop. You're up a pawn while their king cannot cancel anymore. Very good position here for the black pieces. But instead, most players do play knight to c3, which after that you are going to play d6 to open up your other bishop diagonal. So right now there is a couple of options. White could go here pawn to e4, which is immediately not good because there is knight to g4, jumping on g4, immediately attacking the pawn on f2. The only defense for this pawn is to play knight to h3, putting this knight in an awkward place, which after that you will just simply castle. And moves like a5, pawn f5 is coming, and you will get such a great position early on. So this is why e3 is the most common played move to cut off this bishop diagonal. So now you want to continue by playing a5 again. You are probably familiar with this idea right now. First of all, to stop ideas from white playing b4. Also, this rook could also join the game later on from the square of b6. So now bishop to d3 from white, you will castle, and knight g to e2, and now there is this weird idea from black, but it's very, very good. Here the position seems like the king's Indian pawn structure here with d6, e5, but it's very better than that because normally the bishop would be on g7 blocked by those pawns, but right now it's out. So here the best move for black is to go for knight to e8, try to go for pawn to f5. So let's say white goes for e4 right now. What to do? Here you could go queen to h4, immediately attacking the square on f2. And, if white just castles normally, knight to f6, try to come to g4. The only move that does not lose immediately for white here, it's queen to e1, which is so ridiculous. Nobody's playing queen to e1 here. So, a normal move would be like knight g3. So if knight g4, they will play h3, but this will fail due to knight takes f2, rook takes f2, queen takes g3, and it's an immediate win for you. So let's come back and see one more time what happens if white just normally castles and did not push the pawn to e4. Now we are going to play f5, grabbing more central space here, And after knight to g3, we are going to play like a move like pawn g6, covering up our pawn, and we are having really nice position, really good control in the center. Our knight is going to come back. Also, really aggression idea would be h4, h5 with king g7 and lifting the rook to h8. With this knight joining to g4, this queen could also join to h4. This bishop is very nice and active. Pawn f4 is on the horizon, pawn e4 is on the horizon as well, and it's really comfortable position for you as black here, and with it you should be winning the game. So let's go again and take a look on this variation. After d4, knight to f6, c4, pawn e5, d takes, and then knight g4, pawn f4 from white. Like he is defending his pawn with another pawn. So what to do on that? First off, this 4 move, like moving the pawn from f2 weakens this diagonal, so we should immediately go for bishop to c5, immediately threatening knight to f2, forking the queen and forking the rook. So the first move to look for is pawn to e3, but after e3 here, you could go ahead and just grab this pawn, but it's not that good. Like, we are trying to attack. We're not trying to play boring games, right? So we should go here pawn d6. But after white takes, we do not take back. Be careful. We just cast. All what we care about, guys, is the development. When you're gambiting, you just want to go and try to go for the maximum development you could go for. And now d takes c7, queen takes c7, queen to f3 from white, and you see like all of our pieces is active. So right now, for example, knight takes e3, bishop takes e3, and now rook e8. You see this this pin right now, and this activity from white is already really overwhelming, because like bishop to e2 is the only move to try to hang on. But now rook takes e3, attacking the queen. Queen goes to d5, and now bishop to e6, simple developing move, should be very winning for black here, because like the white queen is almost trapped. Probably it could go to g5, but after that it could attack it. The queen drops to h4, and then after simple knight c6, getting the other rook to e8, or even grabbing the pawn on c4 to maximize the pressure on e2, which should be very good for you here as black. Let's go back and see what if white defends knight to f2 with knight to h3. Now, one more time, we are going for the same approach. After pawn d6, e takes d6, simply castles, d takes c7, queen takes c7, knight to c3, and now knight to c6. Now, first off here, like before you play knight c6, a lot of beginners may wonder rook to d8 is good. You are hitting the queen, putting your rook in the open file, but white could get away with it after playing knight to d5, because he is counter-attacking your queen and he could simply get away with it. So this is why we play knight to c6. So if knight to d5 is played, we are just simply going backwards, queen to d8, and show me what you got, white. White goes for e4, grabbing the center, but now rook to e8 immediately hits the pawn, bishop to d3 in order to defend, and now, thankfully, your queen could get in with queen to h4, king to d2, king to d2, and now just simply a move like knight to f6 should be good here for you as black. Another variation, as I told you before, is that after pawn to g5, we discussed about bishop to g3. Now let's see what happens if bishop to d2 is played. Now we are going to simply grab our pawn back, allowing bishop to c3 with this spin. So we are going to develop another knight to defend this knight, and now pawn to e3 from white, pawn to d6 from black, and now the scary move here from white is pawn to f4. So taking advantage of this pin. So are we just lost here as black? And you may come back in the comment section and tell me, wow, you made us lose by playing this. But no, you will take on f4 right now, e takes f4, and now simply rook to g8, sacrificing a whole piece. You may wonder, okay, why am I giving a free piece on move 10? Believe me, this gambit is very sound, as you will see it right now. So f takes e5, taking the knight, queen to h4 check. If pawn g3, then there is queen to e4 check, grabbing the rook, and with it you are probably just simply fine. So after the check, king d2 is forced, and now bishop to h6, hunting down the king. The king goes to c2, trying to escape to safety, but now bishop to f5, checking the king one more time, king to b3, and now just simply lone castle. And the black has got really comfortable position here with this all of this attack going on. White is very way behind in development, and black should be much better, and he should have a crushing attack on the white pieces, and he should win the game. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure to check our latest videos on other openings